Hello, it's me again. And you'll notice I'm in my spacesuit far away from the world. Now, there's a very good reason why I'm doing that, is because I wanted to get a view of the bigger picture. And I thought, no better place than getting out into space and I can really get an understanding of what's going on. So, anyway, these are just intended to be short videos. They're not Bible teachings, they're not sermons, although I will be bringing scripture into them. They are basically designed to be a brain dump. Simply me unloading, just getting things off my chest, things that I'm currently thinking about, that are going through my head. Totally unscripted, although a few minutes before I start recording I've written down 2 or 3 bullet points, but they are completely unscripted, and I wanted them to be raw and sort of wearing my heart on my sleeve and just me being me. Now, I will be upfront and let you know now, some of the things that I'll sometimes say will be pretty raw, they'll be pretty in your face, so if you're easily offended, then switch off now and don't listen. I've no idea about some of the things that I'll say. Like I say, I want it to be totally unscripted and just to come out with things. And I think sometimes there's a lot of value in that, just being completely honest. Although in my other videos, I like to think I'm being very honest, but I'm also being very scripted and trying to keep to a schedule, if you like. So there's all sorts of things. Oh, sorry, Anna, could I have some water, please? There's all sorts of things going on in this world, as we know, and there's nothing bigger at the moment than COVID-19. I'm absolutely sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of it. Every day you look at the headlines, I look at my sources. I've got many sources coming through where I do research analysis, and look at mainstream media as well, although I've got, I don't trust mainstream media at all. I do look at the headlines, and one of the latest headlines today is, once again, front page news, a picture of an evangelical church. One new case in New Zealand. I mean, there's only 5 million people in New Zealand. One new case linked to a church. Again, subconsciously, it's the church to blame because they're not following the rules. Utter BS. That's I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve. This whole thing is complete and utter bull. It's a hoax. Let's just be brutally honest. And I'm going to say some things here that might put people's bark up, but I hope it does, because then that leads to debate. Right, okay, first and foremost, I'll be clear that I believe there is something there which does affect certain people, and it can be dangerous. But what you think about this, some people have seen videos of people reportedly suffering from COVID, struggling for breath, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I've no doubt they are absolutely suffering. There's no question about that. What's the perspective? How are you viewing things? Walk into a hospital where there are people in there that have went past the flu stage, and I'm talking about flu, and they have developed pneumonia. Go and have a look at them, watch them. If you can find any videos of people suffering like that, watch them, because it is exactly the same. Struggling for breath, really going through a very difficult and hard time. If I was to show you on a daily basis people suffering from deep flu, and I'm not talking about, there's a big difference between a bad cold and genuine flu. I remember when I was very young, my mother used to tell me, you'll know when you've got real flu. And something else you told me, which I've never forgotten. It can take many weeks to recover from true flu. Many weeks, even going into 2-3 months. Exactly what's happening with this thing that's going around. And just like true flu in this thing, if people that have got comorbidities, or people that are elderly and their system's been compromised, it can kill them. And other people, younger people and whatever, exactly the same. But let's look now, there's a lot of to and fro with the figures going on with COVID-19 at the moment, but there's a lot of admission now that these high figures of deaths are actually much lower. A lot of the people we're told that have died from this thing haven't died from COVID-19. They have died from the comorbidities that are at the end of their life, and they were going to die anyway. Many of these people, I mean, here in New Zealand, I think we've had 25, 30. Now, about 95% of those people are above 70. Quite a number of them are above 80, 85, 90. These people, serious heart issues, serious lung issues, diabetes, this is what they're dying of. It just so happens they've been diagnosed. And another thing, this PCR test, do you know that it can be calibrated? In other words, it can be changed to show very quickly that you've actually got COVID-19, because the PCR test, what it's doing is it's picking up a base foundation of information that it's looking for, which you will find in every single case of somebody that's got a cold. The site now, because I'm keeping these things short, I am putting forward an offer that if anybody wants to debate me on these things, and I'm not talking about, is trying to score points or putting people down. I'm talking about just having a sensible debate. I will quite happily show you my research, the science behind what I'm looking at, all the rest of it. So if people want to come back at me and really have a go, that's fine. Don't come back to me and just, you're talking rubbish because the government says this. I want to see your research. I want to see your analysis. I want to have a proper debate. For a start off, has any of you heard of Koch's postulates? Koch, I can't remember his first name, but he goes back to the 1800s. And Koch's postulates were the gold standard for determining what a virus is or isn't. And the 4 postulates are 4 criteria which have to be met to say, yes, this is a virus. Well. COVID-19 doesn't meet any of those postulates. Well, how about that then, guys and gals? Not that I'm a fan of the person who used to say that, not at all. Something else I want to say while I'm ranting, shooting from the hip. People say you've got to follow these rules, you've got to follow the lockdowns, you've got to follow the numbers game, you've got to follow the social distancing and all the rest of it. And that's fine. You want to do that, wearing the masks, that's fine. Do it. It doesn't, I'm not offended by that. I'm just quite openly stating, no, not for me. I won't be made a fool of. I absolutely will not be made a fool of. Not by anybody. Sorry, it just ain't happening. I'm too long in the tooth for that. Here's something else. Oh, you're putting people at risk. Yeah, I care about people. Well, first and foremost, anybody that knows me knows that I am talking about people that are in the high risk category. I'm way above the high risk. Way above it. Not only have I got asthma and bronchitis, which is high risk, but I've got many other issues which I'm not going to talk about here, but anybody that knows me knows what I'm talking about. So I am off the charts when it comes to high risk, and I could not give a monkey's. I couldn't care less. If I thought this was something that was really going to wipe me out, I would be probably concerned. But I'm not going to be made a fool of. Not by anybody. So, we should follow all these rules and regulations because the government says so. But because God, the government, says so. The great God government. Okay, fine. And Lee's a bad guy because he doesn't follow along, puts people at risk. Okay, well, I'm going to make an offer, and it's a genuine offer. It's not sarcastic. I want to put it on record here on video. There are countries in this world where a lockdown means you can't work. Just like other places you can't work, unless you can do remote work. But for a lot of people it means you can't work. But there's in these countries you can't work. You can't earn money. You can't buy food. You can't eat. You die. You starve. Unlike here and in the UK and elsewhere, Western world, the government props you up. All part of the plan. All part of the plan for control and reliance on the system. But there are many countries where it means death. Lockdown equals death. Conservatively speaking, there are quite a few million people that have now died of starvation directly because of the measures of COVID-19. Directly. In other words, the measures have killed them. Or I like to call a spade a spade. They've been murdered. Okay? I'll just call a spade a spade. They have been murdered by the system. Because they're third world and nobody cares about them. And I'll tell you something else, very sadly, neither does the Western world, neither does the Western Church. Just follow the rules. My offer is to pay fully for your flight, accommodation, all food, all expenses paid, to go to a country of my choosing. You come with me, and we are going to visit some of these people, and I want you to go in to tell them, to these people, that have members of family and friends that have died, starved to death. They're desperate, they're crying out, they're screaming, tears pouring down their eyes, they're begging for help. I want you to look them in the eyes and tell them to shut their mouths and to obey the rules of the government, because the government's looking after them and taking care of them. See, that's why I put this spacesuit on and came out into space, so that I can get a look at the bigger picture and not be stuck in my own little bubble and be selfish and think only of my own little space and telling everybody else what to do. Like, yeah, we can only do this, we can only do that, and we can only do the next thing. What about Christians I'm speaking now? What about your brothers and sisters that are dying, starving to death? Now, I'm not interested in I'm interested in action. So that offer remains to anybody. I will pay the flight. I will go with you. I'll pay all expenses. You go to a country of my choosing. Everything is paid for. I will take care of it. The only thing I ask of you is if you believe that we should be doing all these things. I just want you to go, look them in the eye, tell them in their face, to wrap it and to follow the rules of the system. That's all I ask of you. And for that, I will, the flight, accommodation, expenses, anything you want to do across here, going to eat good food or whatever, I'll pay it. You've got it on record, so you can come. And by the way, I'm going to limit this to maybe 2 people. So I can't have 50 people coming at me like me. I can't afford that. I'm serious. I'm very serious. I want people starting to think. I want people really starting to think. There was a guy called Martin Niemöller, and he wrote a poem. First they came for the Jews. Now, I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the communists. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. Well, I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for me. And there was nobody left to speak up, to stand up for me. That's exactly what's happening right now. See, you think this is going away? I've been talking about this for long enough now, I just haven't been putting it on video. But for a long time now I've been saying, look, the way this works is, they hit you hard and then they ease off. So they grip you by the throat, choking you, then ease off, you get a bit of breath. Then they grip you by a throat a second time and they squeeze harder, and then they ease off. And then more and more and more until there's no oxygen left, till you're dead. Hit you hard, give you some breathing space. Hit you hard again, harder. And that's how it happens. That's what Niemöller spoke. And the great thing about Niemöller, Martin Niemöller was a German pastor during the time of the Second World War. And the really good thing I liked about Niemöller, who's a model for me. And by the way, when I do these rantings, these shooting through the hips, I'm talking to myself. The great thing about Niemöller is, if we could go back in time and meet him face to face, we could say to him, Martin, look, would you please just take your shirt off and I want you to turn round. And we would notice something really, really up. Straight away, we would notice he didn't have a great big yellow streak running up his back. That's the first thing we would notice. He was a man that stood up. A man that really put his life on the line. He was a man that very much cared about God, he cared about the people. He stood up. He was killed just before the war ended. He could have kept his mouth shut and lived. I think he was only in his 30s. He wasn't an old man. But he was a man that didn't have this yellow streak up his back, and that's important. Because I've noticed that if people have yellow streaks up their back, it's a serious illness. It's people aren't able to speak. They're not able to do anything when they have this yellow streak up. I don't know the name for it. I think the Bible, I think there's a medical term. I think it's something like cowardice, something like that. Anyway, but as I did say, some people might not like the things that I say, but I just shoot for the hip. By the way, I'm just before I came back in here. It was interesting. I was walking up and down the street, and I was stopped by one of these people, that are on the street, and they've got their clipboard and they want to talk to you about whatever it is they want to talk to you about. And she heard my accent and she says, "Oh, you're from Scotland," and she says, "What are you doing here?" And I just turned around and I said to her, "So well, actually I'm here to tell people to repent from their sin and believe in the Lord Jesus Christ." And as it turned out, I was waiting for a reaction, and as it turned out, she was a born again Christian, and we had a great conversation. The three of us, myself, Anna, and this woman, spoke for about 30-40 minutes, and it was incredible. Everything that I've just been telling you, then she knew. I was surprised and I was very heartened. She knew it all this stuff, all this thing that's going on. She was bringing out the COVID, she was bringing out globalism, New World Order, all this stuff. We were into the book of Revelation, we were into Daniel, we were all over the place. And then we were in the street there, and I can't sing, but we were actually singing away, "Soon and very soon, we're gonna see the King. Soon and very soon, we're going to see the King." Praise the Lord, friends. It's not all bad news. Right, I said to you, I do take little notes, but back in the early 30s, see, there's a parallel here. This is what's happening right now. Back in the early 30s, with the Jews, it started off with a bit of name calling, and then there was a bit of spitting, and then eventually pushing and shoving, maybe a punch in the face, and then maybe a brick through Jewish businesses, the windows of Jewish businesses, and then the violence got a little bit more, a bit more aggressive, and then restrictions were put in, so the businesses were only allowed to be open at certain times, and then they were closed at certain times, and only certain people, i.e. Jews, could buy from Jews, and Gentiles were not allowed So really restricting the businesses, and that's very much what's happening now. Here, I'll just give you a parallel in a minute, but it went on. Then the businesses were burnt down. I mean, do a Google on Kristallnacht during the late 30s in Germany, and it was a deliberate thing like that to really give license to go all out attack on the Jews. And so then they started taking the houses from the Jews. The Jews were forcibly removed from their properties taken from them. They were beat badly in the streets. Then they were moved into the ghettos, and then by about 41, 42, they're in a gas chamber. 1932, they're being called names. 1942, they're being gassed. That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now. You know, again, this morning I went to one of my favourite places for a coffee, and it opens at 10 o'clock. Bang, every morning, 10 o'clock. And it was closed, and I was there at 10:30. I thought, what's going on here? And I noticed they'd moved their hours forward to 11 o'clock. This is because there are less and less people going because of the restrictions. They can't afford to pay staff that extra hour, so they've cut down their hours. And I find it so sad because, you know, again, like I told you, these videos are me just unloading. What I'm seeing is this. It's incredible. The satanic plan. These businesses are forced to put all these measures in place, which puts off a lot of people coming in. In other words, they are being forced to participate in the destruction of their own business. We speak to a lot of these people, we meet a lot of them, and it's tragic. It is tragic. Huge unemployment, huge destruction of small businesses. I'm seeing more and more as we go out there. We're looking, if we go further afield and we're looking for a coffee place, you walk to a place where you're going to go in, oh, it's closed. Closed down completely. And then you go and try and find another one. This place is world famous for their coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, stuff like that. But they have been hit hard. They've been hit really hard. And I always promised, I want to keep these videos very, very short. So I'm just very quickly going to read you this, because you must always bring scripture into this. Psalm 107, 33 to 38. He turns rivers into a wilderness and the water springs into dry ground, a fruitful land into barrenness for the wickedness of those who dwell on it. God gives blessings and he removes blessings. He can turn a prosperous land into a wilderness. And that's what we see in verses 33 and 34. It talks about the wicked. So he makes life really hard for them because they've turned their back on him. And so therefore God removes the grace, he removes his blessing. But 35 to 38 says this: he turns a wilderness into pools of water and dry lands into water springs. There he makes the hungry dwell, that they may establish a city for a dwelling place, and sow fields and plant vineyards, that they may yield a fruitful harvest. He also blesses them, and they multiply greatly, and he does not let their cattle decrease. And God can bring blessing. But the reason, I read this yesterday, and the reason I wanted to bring it was because it made me think of that there are people within the church that believe that they're going to have great blessings of God, and all they need to do is pray and God will deliver. You know, I'll pray tonight and then I wake up tomorrow morning and Bob's your uncle, God's delivered everything I want. Your Santa Claus has come with the goods. Look at this. He turns a wilderness into pools of water and dry land into water springs. There he makes the hungry dwell. So he's turned this wilderness into a well-watered land, and he brings the hungry into it. The second part of verse 36. that they may establish a city for a dwelling place. God has created the conditions, He's given the blessing, that they can build a city. In other words, put your back into it. Get working. Start building the roads, start building the houses, start building the whole infrastructure. Put your back into it. Work hard. Verse 37, and sow fields and plant vineyards, that they may yield a fruitful harvest. Get into the fields, get breaking your back, get the sweat pouring, sow and plant, that they may yield a fruitful harvest. The harvest doesn't come overnight. It takes a lot of hard work, and then you've got to care for that. So you've got insects and birds and all sorts of things that will come. All the hard work, and then you reap the harvest. God will create the conditions for you. I want a car and I want a house, Lord. Okay, Lee, I'm going to open the door so you can go to university and study, work really hard, might even take on a part-time job and get very little sleep for a few years, but really put your back into it, being a student, being in poverty, but you'll get a good education. And at the end of a few years, I'll open a door so you can get on the bottom rung in a company and work your way up if you really work hard. And then after many years of hard work, you can reap that harvest. So you want to drive a car so you can go and visit places, or you just have a better mode of transport. Work hard, save your money, be wise, and you get it. You want to buy a house? Work hard, save the money, and then buy your house. I will create the conditions for you, Lee, but you get off your butt and do the work. My friends, I love you all. I don't hate anybody. God bless you all.